but one of the areas we focused on was there's not necessarily a really logical or sensible or strategic way in which federal, state, local dollars are being invested in infrastructure, whether it's roads, bridges, or even private utility infrastructure. There's money coming from lots of different places in different directions, and not coordinated and not frequently at cross purposes, particularly cross purposes with the idea of climate resilience. So we talked about what would it take, and at least at one level that requires better coordination among the federal agencies and between the federal and state, and that we need that to be better informed by the interests, the economic interests of the private sector, that we need the input from the private sector to help us know where are the most critical places to protect their investments. And often if we're doing those things in a coordinated, strategic way, we should be protecting our communities and protecting the environment all in one fell swoop. So that's the concept, and the next step is to kind of take a subset of the group today that met, or maybe a few additional folks, but to convene that group, and EPA has agreed to kind of be an initial convener, and we're thinking about whether we'll include university, academic types, some NGO types, and clearly private sector, but also really focusing on getting the federal and state partners engaged. And one way I was at least conceiving of this is it might be in some ways a regional version of that same, or a regional group that feeds into the National Climate Council that President Obama has formed with a lot of the federal agencies. So that's the concept, and the idea was smarter spending on resilient infrastructure, which I think is self-evident, but smarter meaning more strategic, informed by data and good planning and coordinated.
Great. Anyone want to add anything from that group or any clarifying questions? Let me bring this to you.
I think we touched on this some in our group, really trying to think about, again, valuing things, thinking about things in present value terms, really talking about the long-term impact of a cost of something. And that's one of the things I know I've been thinking about is, while we're talking about resilience here, we also might want to, it's kind of what you touched on, Commissioner, about that, you've got the work on a stream over here and protecting a stream from getting washed away, the same kind of technology we might use on a bridge over there. But I was thinking about things like green roofs, for example, which might, you might make an argument saying, well, economically it's not quite there, but when you add in all the other ancillary benefits between the energy savings and the stormwater protection and the sort of natural cooling effect, not to mention the climate benefit, was there any discussion around that as well, like kind of adding filters, if you will, further filters beyond specific resilience?
Not directly. But I think indirectly we touched on it, because there's lots of, everyone was talking about how you can take different slices of looking at this issue, whether you're looking at it as an engineer and the planning and technical issues that are associated with kind of just engineering good projects, the insurance kind of risk assessment and risk evaluation, and the double duty that can be brought to bear by looking at it from the risk to insurers. And I think it's not a far step to then start talking about other slices that include considerations of water quality protection and benefits and thermal benefits, like thinking about green roofs. So I think part of the challenge for the federal and state agencies that have their fingers on a lot of dollars that are going out the door to these various kinds of activities is to ask the question, do some kind of evaluation of whether or not we're investing in those things that have those multiple purposes and a clear long-term payoff. I think there's also a real question about making sure we spend some of that money to evaluate, to do those actual cost-benefit assessments, so we have real dollars for communities to use as they make decisions.
Thanks, Dave. Do we have one more here?
I was just wondering, as you talked about public-private work groups, if you talk about public-private partnerships in terms of helping fund some of the things that need to be done, and I'm looking specifically at, from a municipal perspective, the large-scale infrastructure projects we have to work on, such as moving our sewage treatment plant out of a coastal floodplain. And did you talk about that at all in terms of, because it's just not all going to come from the government side. So I was looking at, did you talk at all about public-private partnerships?
You know, unless someone else can remember better than I don't recall that we've specifically talked about that kind of thing where you might have private investment in what would otherwise be public infrastructure. We did talk a fair amount about how regulatory changes, new standards might drive private investment, and that was also an area we needed to be careful to make sure we had input from the private sector. But it's a good idea. I don't think we did talk very much about what you're suggesting.
Thank you. And we're gonna move forward to